How's it going, everyone? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're taking a look at cards that you need to have if you want to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2025. There are a ton of incredible cards in the game, so it can be a little bit overwhelming to determine which ones are really necessary and which ones are kind of optional. And hopefully this video can help you make a decision on what cards you want to pick up if you're starting to get into the game, or even if you're a seasoned veteran. So if you're excited for the video, then make sure to smash the like button and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But with that being said, here are some amazing cards that you need in 2025. So I make a video like this once every 6 months or so, and every time I do it a little bit different, but they always follow the same kind of trend. And the first one is going to be that I always focus primarily on cards that are under $10, because I feel like most of the people that are watching this style of video are either new players or people just getting back into the game. So we're going to focus on cards that are around that $10 price range, break them down to different categories like hand traps, board breakers, going first cards, generic cards, and so on. And then after that, we're going to talk about extra deck options. And finally, we're going to wrap it up by talking about cards that you should pick up if you have no budget. If you do not worry about price at all, these are some cards that you would be considering. And those are going to be cards that are above that $10 mark. So everything for now is going to be $10 or below. But our first section is going to be on hand traps. And there are so many hand traps. I recommend you check out my video on my hand trap tier list. It was done about a month ago, but it still is very much accurate to what the format is currently looking like. But there's 4 cards I really want to shout out here because of their price. And basically because of that, everyone should have them in their decks, either in their main or side deck at some point. And that's going to be Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, because it is arguably the most generic and best hand trap, going first and going second, because it can be defensive to protect you from the Charmies, but is also good very offensively as well, or offensively for the Charmies and defensively for pretty much everything else is what I want to say. There's also going to be Infinite Impermanence. This card and Ash Blossom have been reprinted like crazy because of how good they are generically. Imperm is a great hand trap and a great board breaker as well. There's going to be Droll and Lockbird, which is, again, really important in this specific format because we have an incredibly powerful deck being Mitsurugi that is running around. This strategy is incredibly powerful, but it searches a lot. And if you can turn off their ability to search, then they're going to kind of fold a lot easier. And Droll and Lockbird, for that reason, is seeing a lot more play in main decks right now. It's also good against these FTK style decks right now with like the Artifact Mjolnir locks, so just keep that in mind. And finally, the 4th card is going to be Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. It's just a really good card against a wide range of decks. It's really good against the Yummy deck. It's really good against Mitsurugi. It has plays against the deck like Lunalight as well, and a few other options as well. So those are the main 4. Ash, Imperm, Droll, and Ghost Bell. Those are the main 4 I want to talk about, but there are going to be some other ones. And these ones aren't going to be as good in this format, but they're still going to be good at some point. We have, of course, the Bestials, Magnamut, Druisworm, Baldrake. These 3 cards just got reprinted in the Megatins. They're very strong, they're very solid, and they're going to have their format once again. I'm very sure of that. We have Effect Veiler, another great card that's going to see a lot of play. It comes up in decks that play a lot of hand traps, and it's a really solid card because it's not a once per turn interruption, so just keep that in mind. There's going to be Nibiru. Nibiru was once the best hand trap or one of the better hand traps in the game, but it hasn't really been so in a while because a lot of decks can play around it. But pairing Nibiru with another hand trap is incredible, especially at the price that it actually is at. Then we have Fantastical Dragon Phantasme, a really good budget option for a Molcharmi Fubalos or Perulia, basically. It's good against some decks, not so good against other ones, but either way, Phantasme is great because it has targeting protection, it's a big body, and it cycles your hand as well. And finally, or not finally, but second to last, we have Ghost Ogre. Just a good solid card, just not great this format. It was good last format, but not anymore. And finally is going to be the C cards. Specifically, we have Contact C and Retaliating C. These 2 cards, their power doesn't come up too often in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, but in this current format that we're in right now, they're both quite solid options, so I would definitely recommend considering them and picking them up for your collection. Up next are going to be the board breakers, and these are usually cards that you would play when you're going second, but I do have 5 that I want to shout out very quickly for when you're going first as well, because they're good both going first and second. The first one is going to be Called by the Grave. It's just an incredibly flexible card. It's really good going first because you can negate hand traps that would be really annoying, but it's also good going second against a lot of engine cards as well. Like, for example, Murukumo Mitsurugi. It's a great card because it activates in the graveyard, it's able to summon itself back out, has a lot of really annoying effects. And of course, Herald of the Arclight, because it tributes itself for cost to be that Omni Negate, and if you can banish it with Call by the Grave, the effect will be negated. Then there's also going to be something like Triple Tactic Talents, which has 3 great effects. Now, it's usually going to be better going first, just like Call By is, but it still is a solid choice going second because it can non-target take an opponent's monster, which can be incredibly detrimental to their game plan. We also have Triple Tactic Thrust, which can search for the copy of talents, and it can search for so many other amazing cards, both going first and second. We then have Forbidden Droplet. The flexibility on this card is just incredible. The fact that it is a negate on both your turn or your opponent's turn is incredibly powerful. It can get cards into the graveyard for plays. It is so flexible, and that's why it's at this part of the video. There's then going to be Super Polymerization, which is the least flexible of all the options I've mentioned so far in this category because you have to have space in your extra deck to play it, but it is just so incredibly powerful in this format. Oh, and one thing quickly, Triple Tactic Thrust, yes, I know right now it's above $10, but just keep in mind, this is being recorded before we get the release officially of the new Branded Structure deck, which will drop the price, in my opinion, below $10, so just keep that in mind. But then we have board breakers that are around for specifically when we're going second. Starting off with Dark Ruler No More, which is an incredibly powerful card in this format because it's really strong against the Yummy strategy, and it's also really good against the Mitsurugi strategy, which both happen to be one of the best, if not the best deck of the format, and pair incredibly well together. So Dark Ruler is a phenomenal option. After that is going to be Dark Hole and Raigeki. Again, really solid, especially into the Yummy end board, because if you can get rid of the resources without targeting anything, then you're going to be in a great position. Additionally, there's going to be Lightning Storm. Same situation, but it also deals with back row. And, of course, Harpy's Feather Duster. Almost every single side deck should have Harpy's Feather Duster somewhere there. And it's also been reprinted a ton of times, so it's very affordable. These cards are all incredibly powerful and are definitely seeing a lot of play right now. Next up, for some more generic cards, I want to talk about cards that can be good in a wide range of strategies, and starting off with the pots, like Pot of Prosperity, Pot of Desires, and Pot of Extravagance. Each of these three cards have their applications, and depending on the strategy you're playing, there are pros and cons to each of them, but you should definitely have a playset of each of these. But Pot of Prosperity is only at one copy, so you only need to get one of those. Ultimate Slayer is another card I wanted to point out, but it would go into like the board breaker section. It's just a card that may not be as good in this format right now, but everyone should have because of how flexible it can be as well. Then there's going to be Salesman, another great generic card, good going first and going second. Going second, you can use it to call out an opponent's engine card, and that way they can't use it for that entire turn. It's really good against cards that have like multiple effects, like Murukumo Mitsurugi, one of the most powerful cards in the game. Because if you can use the effect of Salesman on that, or something like a Yummy Snatchy, for example, they can no longer use their effects that turn to interrupt you, which is really important. And it's good going first too, because if you have a particular weakness to a certain floodgate hand trap like Dimension Shifter, or more commonly, Droll and Lockbird, you can just use Salesman, call Droll, and that way your opponent cannot Droll you and you can just go off to the races. It was a much more common card a few formats ago, but it still is very good, and it has just been reprinted in an OTS slot, so it should be a lot more affordable. Kaijus are also really important, especially in this format, because we are seeing a bit of a resurgence to a deck like Pearly, but more importantly, we are seeing a lot more Lunalight, which does put up a powerful Towers monster like Liger Dancer, which is unaffected by your opponent's cards, so you just tribute over it with a Kaiju. Now, there are so many Kaijus around that I think you should pick up a wide range of them. I have personally a playset of all of them because I think it'd be good to have them for different situations. For example, Gamma Seal is widely known as the best one because it has the lowest attack stat, but a few formats ago we were seeing Godarla, the Wind Kaiju, being the most important because your opponent would end on a barrier statue of the Storm Winds, which would mean you can only special summon wind monsters, so you just tribute over it with the Kaiju and then you can continue playing the game from there. There's also going to be Dogoron, which is seeing unique play because it has less than 1500 defense points, so you can use the Heat of the Fire Charmer, attack into a monster, crash, and then search for the Dogoron to tribute over a Towers, which is still going to be incredibly powerful. Every single one of the Kaijus is under $1, with the exception of Gamma Seal, which is like $2 to $3 max. Now I want to talk about some good going first options like Dimensional Barrier, which is a great floodgate against so many different strategies and can be game-winningly powerful on its own. There's going to be the Black Goat Laughs, which is going to be reprinted this week in the new Branded Structure deck, but it is currently under $10 as well. Just a good one of or three of depending on the deck you're playing. There's going to be Destructive Ruma Karma Cannon, another solid option, especially off of Triple Tactic Thrust. Not as good as the other two, but still will have its time to shine. There's Mistaken Arrest, which is another great option, a good floodgate, but not too oppressive. Basically, this card, as well as its, I guess, counterpart Shared Ride, are really good, especially in two decks that do a lot of searching, because you can either add cards to your hand, or you can stop your opponent from adding cards at all. So both these cards are going to be very solid. And finally, we have the Solemns in Strike, Warning, and the newly limited Judgment. these 3 cards are incredibly powerful and definitely will see play, especially when you're going first. For cards that you should have that are found in the extra deck, I'm going to split them up by their category. Starting off with the fusions, we have our super poly targets, notably Garura and Muddragon. These 2 are incredibly important, but additionally is going to be Secretarian Dragon, which is really good, especially into the Dracotail matchup. Secretarian Dragon needs any dragon and any spellcaster, and it also stops your opponent from using those monster effects, which is insanely powerful. This card is really good and is still under $10 out of one of the more recent core sets. There's going to be some really powerful synchros that you could consider as well, but synchros are kind of in a weird position because they're not that great in the format right now unless you're playing a very specific deck like Yummy, for example. But cards that you should consider are going to be Herald of the Arclight because of its effect in the graveyard and because it's an Omni Negate. There's going to be Golden Cloud Beast Malong, another great card to have access to for when it's being sent to the graveyard because of its interruption that it has. There's going to be Armades Keeper of Boundaries, which is an interesting card specifically because it's a light fiend monster, because you can use that card, synchro summon to it, and then link it off for Fiendsmith Requiem to get full combo because Moon of the Closed Heaven is now banned. So this is just basically like an alternative to that, but again, for very specific decks. And finally is going to be Borreload Savage Dragon. Yes, I know Savage Dragon is currently banned, but it is super cheap because it's been reprinted in Rarity Collection 1, I think it was, and the card itself is part of the archetype for the next core set, Burst Protocol, and it's going to be, in my opinion, a card that might be considered being unbanned, so just keep an eye out for it. It might be a card to pick up for right now. Then for the XCs, there's going to be a lot of them. There's a lot of really good XCs this format, in my opinion, so just listen up. We have Typhon, number 1, great for dealing with big monsters with over 3,000 attack. There's going to be Zeus, a solid option, not as good as it was in its prime, but still a great option nonetheless. There's going to be Gallant Granite because it can search for Nibiru, a hand trap, or for a Floodgate in Fossil Dyna Pachycephalos. This is just a really crazy part of the Mitsurugi strategy right now, so consider playing this card if you're going to be doing those types of combos. There's going to be Divine Dragon Dragluxion, or whatever the card's name is. It's a rank 8 monster that searches for a Tachyon card, so you can add 7th Tachyon from your deck to your hand, use it, and search for pretty much any card in the game basically with that card effect, so keep that in mind. There's going to be some good generic rank 5s like Canine Ripper, good for a monster negate if it's activated in the hand or the graveyard, and also going to be Valon, which is going to be a Book of Moon as a quick effect, and also a pop of a set card as well, so both those are good effects. There's going to be Mereologic Aggregator, great card, especially when it hits the graveyard, super solid to negate effects, just a good solid option all around. And finally, the only rank 4, or the only, I guess, offensive rank 4 is what you want to call it, is going to be Baguska. Baguska is great, just an awesome card that you should have because it can stop your opponent from doing a lot of things if they're not playing a link-based strategy. For the link monsters though, we have a lot of them again. SP Little Knight, one of the best and most flexible cards in the game today, as well as IP Masquerena, which has become a lot more popular now than it was in the previous format because it's able to prevent destruction effects for the card that it links into, so that is something that is very important in this current format. There's also going to be Access Code Talker, which is there for OTKs specifically. Then we have Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, really good at being able to take opponents' problematic monsters and link them off so they're not actually being affected by a card effect. It's more just like a summoning condition. So this is a really good way to get rid of a Liger Dancer, for example. There's going to be the Charmers, all 6 of them. Hida, Area, Win, Asa, Dark, and Lina. There we go. These cards are great, and I think everyone should have at least one copy in their binder because there's going to be some metagames where they're all going to come up at certain points in time. And finally, there's going to be Tri-Brigade Bucephalus, specifically because if you're planning to send it to the graveyard with something like Ultimate Slayer or Nadir Servant or whatever the case might be, you can use this effect to send another card as well, which can have its value. Now, all these cards are great and they're all under $10, but what if you didn't have any budget to worry about? What cards would I recommend that you pick up? Well, starting off with some just good generic engines, I recommend that you pick up the Mitsurugi engine. Yes, this is like a full deck you can pick up, but it still is incredibly powerful because it can bridge into almost anything in the game. These cards are so incredibly flexible and powerful that you just should have them in your collection. I'm talking about 3 copies of Habakiri, 3 copies of Mitsurugi Prayers, a copy of Murukumo, Ritual, Saji, Kusanagi, and Aramasa. That's going to be, and oh yes, Night Sword Serpent as well. All these cards are really great because they can bridge into so many different engines and are just really playable pretty much across every strategy. Then we have the Kashtira engine made up of Fenrir, Unicorn, and Birth. These 3 cards are really good, and they do have some cyclical formats where they're good in, I'd say, but right now they're not as powerful, but there are going to be some options to consider down the line. And the last engine I want to talk about is going to be the Canine engine, specifically with Izuna and Lupus. And I will say this very importantly, Izuna is like a $25 card right now, but Lupus is like a $1 to $2 card. Get Lupus. We've been in situations many times with deck building packs, especially like Justice Hunters, where cards like Izuna will get reprinted, but Lupus will not, and then Lupus will sky up in price. Get Lupus now, even if you don't have Izuna, because it's going to be probably not reprinted in the next set, while Izuna will be, so you want to make sure you have access to the engine once it becomes more affordable. So definitely grab the Lupus, but of course, get its partners. Get the Ripper, get the Valon, get the Jax. All three of those cards are really good to pair with this type of interruption, this type of engine that you would want to have. And then for hand traps that are much more expensive, it's going to be, well, I think I have 7 of them. There's going to be the Charmies. We have Molcharmies Meows, which is not as good right now, Perulia, and Fualos. These 3 cards are all over like $20 to $40, so definitely pick them up. I would definitely recommend them. They're super powerful. And finally, the last cards on this list are going to be the Dominus series of cards. There are 4 of them. There's going to be Dominus Impulse, Dominus Purge, Dominus Spiral, and Songs of the Dominators. Impulse and Purge are definitely the best of the 4, but they're also the most expensive. While Spiral and Songs of the Dominators are like $12 to $15, the other ones are like $40 plus, and they're all incredibly good for a reason. So that's it. That's my list of like 80 something cards that you should pick up for this format for Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2025. If you enjoyed this video, or if you have questions or suggestions for other cards that people should pick up, let me know down in the comments. I will leave a pinned comment with suggestions from the community. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.